Hey, everybody. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you today. Getting started just a couple minutes early so we can connect. I hope you're doing good today. Welcome all. I won't be able to call on everyone's name because there's a lot of people and I'm so glad to see you. Awesome. All right. So welcome to everyone on YouTube too, live stream, and welcome everyone for our special call today, our monthly call. And I'm gonna probably have to go grab tissue because I'm expecting some emotional stuff to come up because it's been a very emotional month and intense for everyone, really. And so, hey, I'm here for you. If you are out there and you've been suffering, you're not alone. Me too. Me too. I'm suffering too. And going through this amount of worthlessness that's available right now is so intense. I don't think I've been in this amount of suffering in a very, very long time. And it's immense. It's really immense. And I think it's really important to talk about it right now. I was on the phone with my friend last night and he said, I feel like, my life has been pointless and I don't even know where I'm at anymore. And I'm suffering and I'm really hoping that I'm not alone. And so I told him what had been happening to me, and he was actually very relieved that he wasn't by himself all alone going through this because it's intense. So what is going on? What is going on? This is big. This is so important. The immensity of the worthlessness that's coming to the surface, the immensity of the suffering is so great for a reason. It's for a reason. So we kind of gently tapped into it in January. Everyone was feeling a little crazy and stuff was going on all over the world still. And it was ramping up. It was ramping up to February, which has been a month full of processing. And so why? What is going on? Well, ever since the solstice, the foundation of our reality has changed. It's changed immensely. It's been swapped out. Our foundation used to be a lot more form. It had a lot more form. It had a lot more structure to it. Maybe not the best structure, but it still felt like we were standing on something. And now that's all been ripped out from underneath us. It's just gone. It is formless. It's so formless. It's so subtle. All of us all the people I've been talking to, I do lots of sessions, as you know, so I get to kind of have a little bit of a pulse on what's going on. And thankfully, I have a lot of you beautiful clients and people, friends of my heart, all over the world. So I hear you, I listen, I've got all your emails. It might take me forever to answer you, which I will, especially when I'm not feeling well. My immune system has crashed this month, absolutely crashed. And there's a reason. Again, the physical is going to show you what's going on. The body's reacting to this very intensely. It's painful, physically painful. It's mental, emotional pain too. It's all the stuff that we haven't dealt with. And it's so important. It's all the biggest, heaviest trash bags of stuff blocking you from accessing your body, your light body, and all the pure light that comes through. And it's no longer being tolerated by the earth. The earth has decided, all right, this is your last chance, humanity. I'm going to take you up to the very highest levels that I can. I'm going to take you up in frequency so high, it's so formless up here, that you're going to be forced to finally deal with your stuff. And if you haven't dealt with it, it's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep rising up. And all the triggers, see, triggers and reactions are precious because they're showing you this stuff. The stuff is ego. The stuff is trauma, right? And so we're being forced to look at it finally. Earth says, look, you can't work in cooperation with me unless you're clear. Unless you're clear, you got to get clear. So this energy of unconditional love, which is from the divine feminine, actually, and this is affecting women very dramatically, just as well as men. So even though we might name it that, what the frequency is unconditional love, and it's kind of brutal. We like to think of unconditional love as really soft and nice, and it's just not. It is a tool that's going to chip away at your ego, and you're going to feel it. And so now all these little bitty triggers, any little trigger, even a medium-sized trigger, is going to feel like the end of the world. So, you know, maybe you get into a fight with a friend of yours. Maybe you get into a tiff with your partner. Maybe your kids are just driving you up the wall and you can't stand it anymore. Maybe your stress is just so over the top with work that you feel overwhelmed, you can't move. You're immobilized by the immensity of the work that's being asked of you. All of these is what happened to me this past month. And it's just one thing after another, right? And so normally something might happen, right? And if I have a trigger or reaction to it, I'll go in, I'll process it. And I'm trying to look fresh and nice for you today because that's not how I've been feeling at all. I've been laid out and sick and not feeling good. I've been depressed. I've been anxious. I've had panic attacks like I've never had since I was a teenager. I've been probably drinking too much to try to avoid it. I've not been sleeping well, name it. And that's what's been going on with me and everybody too. Even my enlightened teacher is going through stuff too. Everything around her is kind of blowing up and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? So, you know, one little trigger turns into, hey, guess what? We're not just going to chip away at one layer of all this craziness. We're going to dump the whole bucket out for you, right? So a problem with a friend, a problem with my husband, maybe a problem with my family or my children, all of which has happened over the past month. These, then they pull up. It's like it's pulling up an anchor full of dark, nasty junk out of my body. And it just pours it out for me. And I feel instantly overwhelmed by it, right? And this is why my body's gone into these panic attacks where you feel like you don't have any control and you can't breathe, you can't function, you just want to curl up in a ball and die. And that's exactly how it's felt. And finally reaching the rock bottom, it forces you to look at that. Now, I sound like I've processed a lot, and I have, but holy cow, you know, there's a lot to process. And there's an immense amount of worthlessness deep, deep in my gut. It's so immense. It's no wonder I tend to hold weight around my belly. That's where I tend to hold all my fat weight. And, you know, I've been protecting myself from that worthlessness, and I've been hiding it behind an emotion that really makes me uncomfortable, which is anger. And I avoid anger at all costs. Some people actually avoid sadness, and like anger is more comfortable for them. I'm much happier being sad than I am angry. So I'll be sad all day long, but I'll avoid my anger. And now finally I've had to be looking at my anger, and I was able to process through it and get through all the layers of anger where underneath I had hidden all this worthlessness deep in my gut. And so all of you know, who's ever listened to me before knows I'm very transparent about my life. And so, for example, I realized as I was sifting through this immense amount of worthlessness and self-hatred that I've created, and I've hidden it behind my anger, and I've hidden it behind arrogance too. And so it's immense. It's like I stumbled upon a room, right? And this is actually very esoteric in that this is what happens spiritually to people. They stumble across a room like that where they've hidden that, you know how you put stuff away and you're like, dang it, I hid that for myself so well, I can't find it. That's exactly what I did with all my worthlessness. And so I finally found it. It's like I found the room, and right, and you open the door and it's like piles all over you and you fall over because you're overwhelmed by how much worthlessness you just hid from yourself for so long. So I'm like, all right, I know what to do with this. I know what to do with this. I need to sit with it. I need to welcome it. I need to feel it. You can't avoid it. You got to spend time every day doing this. And sometimes it's going to be all day long, subtly. I welcome this. I welcome this, waves of pain and worthlessness and agony and suffering and memories, right, that want to come up, subconscious traumatized selves who still need help, programs, all these different things that come up. And every minute, just trying to get through it, it feels like you're getting sucked down into a whirlpool. And last month, we talked about sort of this separation happening where there's the sinking, the bringing people and all of their density and their ego to the rock bottom, and so that they can hit the bottom and go up from there. And that's what I had to do too. Just because we've been good at processing or whatever, or we might be working really hard on ourselves, this is going to show up for all of us who have been doing that hard work. Don't be discouraged, because so many of you have been working so hard on yourselves and you're tired. How long are we going to have to do this? How much more worthlessness do I have? That's the thing, is let go of the idea that this is going to end, because even in enlightenment, there's still pain. And I got this beautiful, precious question emailed to me earlier, and I want to address it, and I will. And it has to do with suffering. Like, hold on a second. We're all part of source. Why can't we end this suffering? Dang it. Aren't we smart enough? Aren't we capable enough? Why this suffering? The desire to end suffering is really big, especially for all of those who've been working in love and light. The desire to end it is huge. And the desire to perhaps save the world too is part of it. It's the savior complex for the self as well as everybody else. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And there's nothing wrong with suffering. Suffering is learning. And let me tell you what happened to me, because the personal, right? When we get together every month, I like to talk about the personal, and then I like to link it up to the collective, to what it means for the planet, to what it means for our galaxy and the universe, because there is nothing personal. My personal experience is simply an illusion that it's personal. It's part of all these layers, and my experiences intimately affect all of these layers, and yours do too, at an absolutely equal level, whether you're talking to people on YouTube like this or not. You could have not left your apartment all month, and you're still affecting the universe. So going through this stuff, right, all the trigger of all the worthlessness and this immense amount of self-hatred, it feels awful, it's miserable, it's agony. And finally, it gets so heavy. And I'm moving through these layers and it gets so heavy, I literally feel like it was crushing me. And I hit rock bottom. And I quietly went into my room one evening after having two major realizations. One, I've put everyone else first. And this is something that I needed to learn, right? So in the polarity of putting others first, putting myself first, right? This is just a polarity. In that polarity, I have swung hard to the side of, I'm going to put others first. Part of it had to do with me bypassing my worthlessness. It feels better to help other people and ignore my stuff and ignore me. And now I'm too old and my body says, hey, you have to take care of you now. If you don't, we're not going to last. We can't take this anymore. And so my body, my immune system crashed. I got really sick. I'm still coming out of it. It's a lot of different things. It's not just one, it's like all of it. Every possible problem I could have just got pushed to the surface, literally. Like my skin has erupted. That's a good example. The skin's like, look, I'm going to detox. This is emotional detox. This is what it looks like physically. It's a massive amount of detox, right? And so when I was going through it, it felt so incredibly heavy. It felt like death. It was going to be either my body or my ego was going to go. And it felt like being torn apart. So I quietly go into my room and I'm dazed. I'm dazed by the panic. I'm dazed by the worthlessness and the self-hatred. And I can't be around my family because I can't function. I can't even think straight. So my husband and the kids were playing outside and I quietly stepped away and I closed my door and I sat on my bed and cried. And I thought, this is it. I'm either going to die and death is the only way out of this, or something's got to give, because I give up. I can't keep wallowing through this. I'm lost. I feel lost. I feel it's so heavy. How am I going to get out of this hole? And so I sat in front of the window and the sun was going down. And I'm so lucky, my window right above my bed goes and looks straight out at the setting sun. And the sun, the clouds made it look like a big eye. It was very cool. And the sun was low enough for me to begin to gaze at it, to actually just allow the sunlight to move through my eyes. And I do this as much as I can. And it feels really good, but I'm begging for help at this point. And this was just this past weekend, guys. So I'm sitting there and all this light's moving through me and I suddenly hear the words, Elizabeth, what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? And instantly it made me think of this artist who's probably my favorite artist in the whole wide world, and I can't even remember her last name. Her name's Marilyn, and she lives at a beautiful place called Montasueños in Vilcabamba, Ecuador. And she is the widow of a very famous ex-astronaut engineer who did a lot of work with natural and sustainable living. And her art, you could take a square half inch of any of her paintings and they look like a painting themselves. That's how incredibly detailed and rich the art is. There's layers and layers and layers of reality in her artwork. And there's many, many dimensions expressed in the artwork. And when I look at her art, I finally said, somebody sees the world like I do. This is what it looks like. And her art was some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And that's what I thought of. So I'm thinking of this painting in my mind. And that's what I said. I said, Marilyn's art, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And, you know, I could have probably picked like my children, or which they're beautiful too. It's the first thing that came to mind was these masterpieces. Every single one of her artworks are a masterpiece. And suddenly the whole scene looked like one of her pictures, and I'm in it. Suddenly my room and the sunset and the blackness of the stark trees moving through the light, looking like dark, creeping into the beauty of the light, all of it became one. It was all a masterpiece. And I was drawn into the moment, the richness, the masterpiece of the moment. And it touched me so deeply. It brought out my light. It brought out my soul, the one that's in charge, not my ego, not my trauma. That's not what's in charge, not this pain, but my soul. And I felt the oneness of the moment, and it was so vivid. It was so vivid and living, and it kept me solidly in that moment. Every single moment as it passed, I could feel the presence of each moment fully. And it hasn't left, thank God. So I've had this sort of ladder, a way out of the immensity of the suffering. And so I'm still moving through the suffering, but a big bucket of it got dumped out, and I could feel it leave my body because I was finally so welcoming of it that it lost its power and its density, right? Because it's just consciousness under pressure. Suffering is consciousness under pressure. We think that we want to avoid it all, but we don't learn as souls without this. We don't learn as well without it. And without it, the human race would have become so arrogant that we would have become the enemies that we really don't like. And we haven't. And we've become in a lot of ways our own enemy, because we are often bypassing the shadow. We're bypassing the consciousness under pressure. We're bypassing the clearing and the processing that is required to continue to move forward. Now, eventually, if we're willing to surrender to the formless structure that is now our foundation, and you can't stand on that stuff, man, you've got to surrender. You're going to have to float. You're going to have to float. You got to lay down and let it take you. And it's going to take you into all the worthlessness that's left, all the trauma that's left. And why? Why do we need to address this? Why are we choosing to address it now? We do need to dream, of course, mystically dream a better future for ourselves. One where the suffering is simply upkeep and not us having to go through all the lineage suffering that is there as well. Not us having to go through all the karmic suffering and the personal suffering. It's going to be us as a collective being in a state of oneness. But this is happening very slowly, and it's happening from the ground up. It's happening from the ground up. So especially in the feminine body, a lot of women are going to be feeling all the density that they've let kind of settle in their bodies, especially in the root, where the womb is, where the pelvis is, and the power center of the feminine body. You're going to feel it pushing up a lot of junk. And it's going to be around you to be addressed. It's going to be laid out in front of you, and it's going to feel overwhelming because it's all of it. It's not just a little bit of it anymore. It's all of it. Now, being able to finally process through this, there's always the sensation, there's a breakthrough that happens. And that's what happened to me last weekend. I finally felt like the masterpiece of the moment was how I was going to be able to get through this. And I was willing to finally fully embody all my worthlessness and allow it to shift out of my body. And the lightness, the physical lightness is very, very measurable. And I can feel the lightness in my pelvis, in my womb. And now I'm starting to get to know two big parts of myself. Number one, that I have always been in service and never served myself as sort of a self-deprecating punishment, and that I actually have no clue how to meet my own needs. And I'm starting with baby steps, like asking myself, hey, Elizabeth, do you need to eat right now? Baby steps. Baby steps to what would you like to wear today? What do you need right now? And I'm asking myself these questions, and I've never asked myself these questions before. And it feels so strange. It feels strange for me to feel cared about by myself. It's a very weird feeling. And so, how do I meet my needs? We've got to relearn this. How do we meet our needs outside of the worthlessness and the suffering? How do we meet our needs spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically outside of the ego? How do we meet our needs when we're done processing worthlessness? And do we ever stop with that? No, we don't. It will be upkeep. And I'm going to find more worthlessness as I go along, but I know what I'm looking for. And I know how it feels. And I know how it feels to have moved a lot of it out of my way in my body. And now I feel this lightness. And it feels so good. I'm trying to project it to you, this lightness, so you can feel it too. But here's the thing too, it's very, like I said, it's very physical. And now I can look back on my life, and I'm learning how to have compassion for Elizabeth. And I'm learning that her story is important. And it's been my goal to heal my trauma without having to relive my stuff, relive the story. I do believe we can heal trauma without having to constantly tell the story over and over again. But now that the charge is lifted and the worthlessness is becoming more and more cleared, I can actually see that I need to talk about that story more. And so I'm writing stories about my life, and I'm writing a little autobiography, and it's called Whiskey, Sex, and Demons, which at first sounds really funny until you read the book, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's not as funny as I thought. So those are my 3 vices: alcohol, sex, and dealing with the demonic. So the story, it needs to be told. Your story needs to be told, everybody. Your story is important. Your story is so important. Your successes, your failures, the most important pieces are there. And at least the lesson that you've learned, because you're so smart. You are so smart. Your body is so intelligent, and you've been through so much. And it's so very unique. So realizing, I need to know this story. I need to have compassion for Elizabeth. No wonder she had to have a hysterectomy a few years ago. Well, I stored all my worthlessness there. No wonder I lost my uterus. That makes sense. And I have compassion. I have compassion for myself, finally. And I never had it before. I didn't have it at all. And I'd attract these situations that would show me that I am compassionate, show me that I'm capable of unconditional love. And then I would always run away the minute that I'd have to ask myself, am I loving myself this way? Am I being compassionate to myself as much as my friend or my partner or my children? Am I being compassionate to me? No, I have not been. No. Haven't done it. This is new, and I have no clue what I'm doing. So I'm trying, and it feels good. It feels good, but it's also really hard because I'm learning how to ask for help. So let me give you another example. Last September, I had an abduction experience. It was my 3rd one. And to my horror, it was really bad. It was a terrifying experience that turned into one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. And I was able to have universal compassion because of that experience. Universal compassion for the beings that were doing stuff to me. And an injection happened during that event, and it really messed up my head. It made me see the immediate past and future all at once, which, as for a psychic who can already see so much, it felt like torture. And it took me several days to even come back to an ability to function in the 3D at all. Thankfully, my husband was there and just took good care of me and made sure I was detoxing the best that I could. And so with that event, you know, I attained a sense of compassion even for the thing that was causing the biggest problem, this other being that didn't have any care about me and didn't have any compassion for me, but I still found an ability to find compassion for it. And so nonetheless, this universal compassion came online, but I was still in total denial over how I was not taking care of me. I thought, oh, good, I can have compassionate for all the darkest shadow stuff. And what about me? I just completely left myself out of the whole equation. And so months go by, months, right? And I'm still suffering. I'm still having trouble with time. My brain, I'm in resistance to the way my brain has been rewired since that experience. And I just try to tough it out, right? Toughing it out. That's a program, isn't it? So I was toughing it out. You know, you can be a big girl, pull up your panties, you can handle this. It's going to go away eventually. And it never did. And finally, I had to ask for help. I go to my teacher and I say, here's what's going on. I haven't asked for help because I'm learning how to finally care about myself. And now I just can't handle it anymore and I need help. And so her answer was, well, first off, the problem is not the problem. The problem is not that your brain's been rewired. The problem is that you're resisting it. You're resisting a new skill set. You're resisting the end of limitation around time. And she was right. She's right. Once she named that, I was able to notice my resistance and how it was physically hurting me. And resistance will physically hurt me immensely. In particular, resistance will. And so stopping resisting it now, it's made it open up into new realms of skill that I'm still, I mean, I'm just, again, this was last week, so I'm still a baby at that too. But just trying to get by and saying, okay, I'm resisting this. So listen, this is a clue for all of us. If you're resisting anything coming up, your physical body is going to show you that you're in resistance. And my body has been trying to tell me for months now, and I'd get really sick and then I'd get better for a little while, but I wouldn't get like 100%. And then, you know, maybe I'd do an interview or I'd do a show or I'd do several days of sessions and I just feel completely wiped, like just a big backlash of dense energy, and then have to climb up out of that hole again and again, and for months now, until finally the hole was so slippery there wasn't any way I was getting out. And then I had that breakdown. I had to hit rock bottom. The other thing that I experienced that I hope will be useful to you is that I was trying to calm my mind, which is very, very hard to do at this point. And it's always been hard because as a psychic, I'm seeing so much all the time. Trying to meditate is really hard. It's really, really hard. And I've had to find different ways to meditate than traditional, quiet, mindful meditation. It makes me come out of my body and then I just go play in the astral and I don't actually meditate. So just noticing that coming up, it was really hard. So I said, you know what? I'm going to ask for help. How many years has it been since I've been trying to meditate? For so long, so many years, and I haven't asked for help. So I asked for help. And this time I asked somebody who I know well, but he's not in the body. He's my teacher's teacher. And my teacher is Lucia Renee. And she wrote the book, Unplugging the Patriarchy. And her teacher, his name was Rama. And, you know, Rama went through lots of stuff. He had plenty of ego. I didn't even know him at all. I never met him in this lifetime. But he's been one of my greatest teachers because he has come to me in dreams and visions and shown me things that have continued to unfold throughout my whole life. And they have been some of the most precious things I've ever experienced. So I asked him for help. I said, help me. I'm going through all this pain and this worthlessness. I'm in these panic attacks and I can't meditate and I feel crazy. And he shows up and he's like, come with me. So I follow him and he throws open these two big doors, like a double French doors. He throws open these double French doors and I walk into this new room. It's like a place I'd never been. And it's very dimensional. It felt like another dimension. He's like, this is where you're headed. It turns out that's the 9th dimension. You know, that's the energy that the earth is maintaining. And you'll get a sense of why here in a second. So he says, go look at the light. And so I go forward and I see this beautiful sort of open window of light, or a big doorway because it was tall, a doorway of light. And I'm gazing into this light. It's very pure. And then it sort of starts to lay itself out like a bunch of cards getting laid out around me until I can't see it anymore, but it's going behind me. It's getting laid out. It's all the frequencies of the universe. All of them were wavelengths, and they were coming down like little rivulets or like little waterfalls of frequency. And there were so many of them, many thousands, tens of thousands, right? 10,000 paths, 10,000 paths to source. Every single one of them was like a path to source. And so I was surrounded in it. But, you know, after it moves from here, then my peripheral vision, it's out of my vision, right? And so I feel like, oh, I can only see part of it. And so Rama says to me, he said, this is an illusion. You think as a human being that you are relegated to a certain amount of access to certain frequencies in this universe because you feel like you can see them, hear them, smell them, and then that's it. All the rest of them you can't perceive, right? That's what we're taught. That's what we're taught. And he said, that's not true. That is not true. The human experience has been engineered specifically so that you can walk around that whole room and you can wear every single one of those frequencies and get to know them. This includes all of the shadow and the dense and the dark and the evil and all of it. It includes all of it. And he said, someone wears a frequency of worthlessness. They're wearing it so they can understand it, so they can learn about it. Part of that learning is the lament of the worthlessness. Oh, this feels so bad. Why do I have to experience this? Why me? Why do I have victim written across my forehead? Right? This is us wearing these frequencies, getting to know them. And he said, ask yourself, Elizabeth, are you done? Are you done getting to know worthlessness? Because all it is a frequency. Are you done wearing worthlessness? Have you got to know that part of the library of consciousness well enough? In that moment that he told me that, I said, no, I'm not. I'm not done. And then I went on for another week or 2 weeks, getting to know the rest of the worthlessness till it felt so helpless that it forced me to finally say, I think I have learned as much as I can from worthlessness, from the vantage point of Elizabeth. I think I'm done now. And that was when the masterpiece of the moment revealed itself, and I could be done with that bucket of worthlessness deep inside it, deep inside me, and then welcoming it so deeply that it was dissolved. And now the physical repercussions of that dissolving is the healing of my skin, me starting to get my energy back, me starting to feel relieved from any of my expectations around friendship and relationship and all of these things, and all of the relationship that I've had with myself and the worthlessness incurred from that too, right? This is why suffering is important, because we're here to learn. And then when you understand worthlessness fully and you embody that understanding, then you're done. And yeah, that frequency might come up for you to wear again, but it's so familiar. It's not going to remain in your field as something that will continue to build up layers of dense, dark, and really difficult trauma and emotion. So, what am I going to wear now? I've decided I'm wearing joy. I'm going to just wear joy and see how being happy feels, y'all. Like, I am happy. It's true. I'm a happy person. And now I can actually physically feel it because the worthlessness is gone. I can feel joy in my gut now. I can feel joy in my root. I can feel connected. And so then, next is going to be my heart. What's in the way of my heart? How am I going to be able to anchor into this formless energy and be one with it so that it can serve the rest of the planet through me? Whether I'm interacting with people or not, it doesn't matter. Your physical presence and the physical presence of this unconditional love, this very high level, ninth dimensional energy that has no prejudice for any frequency. You see, divine unconditional love has no prejudice against worthlessness. It simply absorbs it. It has no prejudice for joy. It absorbs it. It becomes one with it. There's no prejudice against or for any of these frequencies anymore. And this leads to the next big piece I wanted to share with you. What's this going to look like as human beings start to catch up to all of us who are trying to do this work? And we're on the cutting edge. If you're even listening at all, you're on the cutting edge. We're all in new places in navigation of consciousness, and all of humanity is right on the verge. We're right on the edge of this. And some people are more aware of it than others, and that's okay. There's going to be unique awareness for each person. So, first, I realized, oh my goodness, this little window of the life of Elizabeth is so precious. I want to use it for humanity. I want to use it for the earth. I want to use this little window. It's like a spotlight that's only on for a certain period of time. We have such short lives. It's only on for a certain period of time. And that little bitty period of time, that particular light wavelength coming from you and your soul moving through your body, both of which are unique in the universe, by the way, that particular light wavelength has never existed before. You're incredibly unique in that, and your light is so special. Certain people can and will and have been affected by your light. So this inner work, the work to clean up the field so that the light is not distorted, so it's more pure. We clean up the field, we clean up the trauma, we clean up the ego, we clean up our reactions, noticing them because they keep showing us where the ego is, where the trauma is, so we can sift through it. You're cleaning up the window, you're cleaning up the light, so that light can be so pure, so your essence can be so pure. And that's so special, it's unique. And certain people are able to receive a lot of support and light, and certain places and things will be able to receive a lot from you if you're willing, purifying it, making sure it's not distorted by your pain and your suffering, making sure it's not distorted by your ego, right? And so that beautiful spotlight that you are, merging with all the other spotlights that are available right now. And if we're conscious enough about it, being able to work together as unique spotlights that are working for the earth, working for humanity and their sovereignty. And this is going to happen for those who are willing to surrender to that unconditional love available now. It's mercy. It is Christ consciousness. It is Divine Mother working in tandem together, creating a beautiful platform of immense interchange. So take this opportunity now. If you want to be done with your particular personal processing and you want to really help your lineage and clean up your DNA and do all of this, it's an effort that is of repercussions for the rest of humankind to a very massive galactic level, because we will then help humanity step up to the position at the galactic table that we deserve, and we'll have earned it. And it will be each of us as individual lights, all those little spotlights coming together makes quite a bright show of humanity, doesn't it? And so this is the end of comparison. It's the end of competition. I keep seeing all these wonderful healers coming out of the woodwork saying, I think I'm ready. Perfect. Because there's some people, and there's certain people on this planet who need you in that particular light. Not my light, not my teacher's light, your light. Your light. Certain souls need you. Certain places and animals and plants, they need you. Not me, you. And so this is how precious it is. Bow to all of the different souls and the varieties of light that are available. Bow to yours and its uniqueness at this time. And then the second thing I wanted to share too, or piece, was about the end of stewardship. So I did a session for a woman the other day, and horses who I've had psychic discussions with before. And they're very beautiful beings, these horses. And so she was talking about how she was, wanting to make sure that they were taken care of, right? Like, what if I die suddenly? What will happen to them? Totally normal concern, right? And the horses, so I checked in with the horses, and they actually had a very different than any of us were expecting. They said, they showed me first this structure between humans and animals. And so they were using their human as an example. So here's the human and here were the horses, and there's this structure between them. And so she's looking through the structure at the horses. And the horses, they're not acknowledging the structure. They were trying to look around, but it affects the way that she was interacting with them. And the horses said this structure is this idea of stewardship over the earth. And they said, this has got to go. Because first off, y'all weren't very good stewards. And secondly, it's just a power over paradigm. And they're like, look, it might look like you're helping us and taking care of us and feeding us and all of those things. And yes, that's true, you are. But we're taking care of you just as much in ways that you haven't noticed yet. And we are co-creating this relationship with you. It's not you having stewardship over us. That's just an illusion you've been taught. It's you working with us. And we want to co with you a relationship that can heal you too. If you're willing to drop this power over and collaborate with us and with the earth, then we'll show you how we've been taking care of you, and you're going to be amazed. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I hadn't thought of it like that. That's actually where we're headed. And this is so important. This is a good little glimpse. It's something to work for. It's something to dream into existence, right? Because if we worry about the future, we're leaking energy. If we, with our imaginations and our third eye and our heart, if we dream into existence, and then we release any expectations around the dreaming of the future, we release those expectations to Source, because Source can come up with way better possibilities than we can. Source will come up with way better possibilities than we can, much, much more creative than we are. And that's wonderful. We're part of the creation. We're part of being created. And so we release our expectations and attachments to the dream, but we still dream to exist. And this is different than being attached to or worrying about the future. So we can still stay with the masterpiece of the moment, walking into each layer of the masterpiece, each moment, dreaming about what the masterpiece can look like for the future, being willing to surrender the dream and being able to embody each moment fully in all of its frequencies, in all of its joys, and all of its pain. And then this is how we'll be able to physically embody all this unconditional love. It'll move through us, it'll move through our hearts. It's going to help our hearts expand. It's going to help us feel the rest of the collective. Even if you haven't been a collective empath, expect over the next few years to feel the collective more and more intensely. And then we're going to all be able to psychically perceive one another much better. We already can. It's already happening. It's very apparent that human beings are naturally good at this. But being able to turn it into a part of the way the human experience is lived and allowing it to be implemented in our cultures is going to be so interesting. That's that we will begin to rebuild. So we're going to physically rebuild, and the masculine is going to be embracing that unconditional too. And then they're going to help. And anyone willing to get their hands dirty, if you want to start, breaking some of these buildings, recreating them, do it. And so whoever wants to get in to rebuild physically, that's going to be part of it. We're going to be doing this in a new way. We're going to rebuild all of the structures and the infrastructure that is no longer working anymore, that's sick, and we want to rebuild it. But culture change happens not just from the physical up. It happens from mind down too. We're going to have to be changing our beliefs. Like, can we believe that humankind is intimately connected energetically, emotionally, mentally, and physically? That's a big belief change for many cultures on the planet. And so you and I might believe that perhaps, but that's only a small portion of the change that has to happen. And so it is going to be physical and mental, emotional at the same time. And then that's going to force the political economy to change. It's going to force any social structures to change too. So the political economy is the hardest part to change. And if you want that to change, your physical with this planet and the beings that live on it with you, the bacteria, the animals, the plants, all of these things are going to be a collaborative relationship, right? And you can physically start doing that now. You can physically keep emotionally processing your stuff in a physical body to embody the next level of formlessness and light. You can physically be willing to be done from some of these more difficult frequencies and be willing to process what they have brought for you so that you can step out of it into something else. And you can do a lot right now. And so emotional processing has a dramatic physical effect. Don't underestimate that. And that's a perfect proof that physical change and mental, emotional, spiritual change intimately change a lot faster than any other type of change, any top-down only or any bottom-up only or any political, economy, or social structure-based change. So coming from an academic vantage point around culture change and implementing it into a spiritual practice, this is what will take us to the point where we're going to finally be ready to cooperate, divine feminine being the doors that will open to the golden age, our divine cooperation, our divine oneness, additional love, incredible, immense amounts of forgiveness and immense amounts of healing continue to happen. But right now, it just feels like hell. So this is just the beginnings of, it looks great down the line if we're dreaming that into existence, but we don't live in the future, and that's not where the action is. It's in right now. We're all still doing the really hard work, just getting our bodies, minds, and spirits ready to do the rebuilding. And that is so necessary. So this is what this looks like at the moment and how I'm perceiving, connecting to all these layers, including what's going to happen to us in the future. And I hope that some of these personal experiences will help you feel relieved. That it might help you feel connected, that it will help you feel less alone, and that you're going to be able to feel the difference if you keep going. Don't stop. You might be losing your identity right now. You might be wondering if there's any point to any of the things you've been doing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, 70 years. You're going to wonder a lot of this. And it's continue to be a bit tough for a while. But listen, just every solstice that happens, it opens a door that leads you to the next door for the next solstice. The next door is the next solstice in June. And I'm doing a retreat in Vilcor in person so we can take advantage of that together. And I'll put that information underneath the replay call. But then, of course, there's more. You know, we can't stop collaborating. Keep reaching out to your friends, reaching out to different people. Keep reaching out and keep trying to work together. Don't stop. And maybe also spend some time telling a story. Even if you never let anybody look at it, maybe write it down, maybe talk into a recorder. Tell your story, because your story is the spotlight. The whole story of Elizabeth's life is a spotlight. And as long as I'm willing to process whatever the story brings and willing to go into it and help relieve any charge around the different things that have happened to me, willing to look very closely at these things with great compassion for myself, then that story, bringing that story out to the rest of the world, will be a great healing act. It will be a healing act for me, but it's going to be a healing act for people who needed to hear that story too. And they do. And the way that we do this is through deep vulnerability, through great honest transparency. I mean, that's all I'm doing is that. That's it. I'm not here to be a powerful guru. I am not interested in power. I'm interested in learning. And that's my number one goal, is to learn as I can so that I can keep attaining these beautiful higher states to benefit humanity to benefit my soul's, to benefit source. And so that's the pure intent I have. That's my intention, is to be a cheerleader for humanity. And by doing so, I've got to be transparent and vulnerable. I got to talk about what really happens to me. I got to be honest about where I'm at and how I struggle and how I get through these struggles. Because maybe one of you really needed to hear that today. Maybe that's just enough to keep somebody from checking out too early, to keep somebody in their body, to keep somebody from killing themselves. They needed to hear that, hey, Elizabeth's been suffering too. And maybe that's just enough to keep you in your precious body and keep you on this journey. Sometimes it's just enough to keep us going. And it has been for me to hear, hey, I doubt my enlightenment and I suffer still. To hear that, to know that she's on an intimate journey with me has helped me keep my head above water. And I know that this can too for somebody out there. So if you know somebody who needed to hear this message today, send this to them so they can hear it. And maybe that will be just enough to keep their head above water too. Don't underestimate your story and your vulnerability. It does make a difference. Very good. Here we go. Wow, it's amazing how I can talk for an hour straight and not realize it. So we have another hour and I want to answer any questions coming up. And what's been happening to you? How are you? What's going on? What's new? You can type in the chat, you can type in the Q&A, or you can type on the YouTube, and I'm going to go to all three. And so I'm going to start with the chat and just look at what's showing up here. And I am so glad that I've been able to help. And yes, thank you to the horses. They're so smart and so clever, and beautiful. I was just so proud. And I have horses too. And I, after that session, I went out and I sat with my horses and I just thanked them. I thanked them for taking care of me. And I could feel them just loving me and showing me how to be present with them, showing me how not to be afraid of, how powerful they really are, because horses and even little ones. And so just feeling them, thanking them, thank you for helping me, is that I still don't know, but just being in gratitude, had this sort of talk with my cat, like, thank you, Otto. Thank you, Otto, for helping me so much. And he's helped me a lot in ways that I really don't know if I could have made it through without my cat. And, when my dog too, and my dog that died a year ago, and my new dog, Chloe, and how she's helped us heal all that. She's helped us just as much as we've helped her. It's so cool to see it that way. And it's so enriching. It's enriching. Very good. Okay, so I'm just reading through chat here, so sorry if it's annoying. I'm just looking for any questions. And yeah, the immobilization, and surrender to it. Because we can't stand on this energy. You gotta float. That's it. Just notice it, fall into it. And it's not gonna be you going forward into it. You've got to, this is like a trust exercise to the divine unconditional love available. Can you trust it? Follow it. Let it take you. Let it hug you. Let it hold you. Let the net, the web of life, let it catch you. Every time you fall, it always catches you. This time, purposefully let yourself feel like you're falling into it. And you'll feel it lift up around you. I don't know if everybody has had the honor and privilege of being able to swim in the actual, because swimming in a swimming pool is one thing. And I just last year finally got to swim in the ocean and do a little bit of thing. And it was so different than any experience I've had. I'm quite terrified of deep water, and I have no terror of it anymore because I'm in this water and you feel so buoyant. But more than that, you feel held. I felt held by the intelligence of that water, and that water saying, "Don't worry, I've got you." And this lovely hug, this hug from the ocean, from this beautiful, intelligent water, it felt so incredible, so alive. And that's what this feels like. It feels like being able to float in the ocean and feel fully held by the immensity of it without any fear of its depths. And that's what I want you to be able to feel too. Use that as like imagine it to be so, and you'll see what I mean. And so, yes, a lot of people are saying, "Yep, me too. Been going through it last year too." Yvonne says, "Hey, if I express anger, I get sick for like days afterwards." Yeah, because we resist it, don't we, Yvonne? Especially with anger, right? Because it makes you feel crazy and you really want to avoid it. And sickness shows up with that. Like, that's always a clue that resistance. And especially for me, like, I'll get physical pain that'll lay me out because I'm resisting the energy of anger. So Yvonne, stand in the frequency of anger, especially now without any triggers. Just kind of hang out in it and imagine it like a book that just wants to be understood, right? And imagine going through the pages of anger that is available to you, and maybe anger that you've never had available to you too, and just sift through the book energetically, emotionally, allowing the different kinds of anger to show up. Because you'll notice, oh, this is far more diverse than me just being mad. There's righteous anger, and then there's like indignant anger, and there's livid anger, and there's the different kinds of anger. And you're just getting, that's all. You're learning from it. You're in the section of healing that says, in the Library of Consciousness, this is the book of anger. And your soul picked it up and was like, I want to read this. Do I want to read this? Not so sure. Ooh, good. Oh my gosh, now I'm sick. I don't want to read this, but I'm holding the book. Maybe I should. So your soul go into it so that it can read the book fully. Again, you don't have to be triggered to do this. It's all available. There's nothing keeping you from it. And if trauma blocks you and it pops up because of the anger stuff, good. Go in and process trauma and then go back to it. Go back to the anger again. Am I done getting to know anger? And if we get ill because we're resisting reading the rest of the book, and embodying that knowledge, right? So then it doesn't have power over you. So hopefully that'll help, Yvonne. Someone asked, is it going to calm down? No, it's not. We're going to have to get used to this. It will plateau, though. It'll plateau. It'll feel calmer as we get used to it. And then we'll get raised up higher. The higher you go, the steeper it is, and the heavier the ego and the trauma is. That's why it feels so heavy right now, is because we're actually quite high at the moment. But that causes all the density of ego to be so much heavier. It's like gravity gets stronger the higher you go. So that's why it's so uncomfortable at the moment. Yeah, exactly. Ego is struggling to survive. It's that feeling, it's either going to be me who dies or ego. Death is the out. That's how it feels, in the bottom of it. Death is the only way out. And this struggle of, well, if my body dies, then this whole thing ends, and then the ego ends up dying anyway. So when I live, can I be in this body still and allow my ego to dissolve in this light? It hurts. It hurts and it doesn't feel good. And that's a clue. That's a clue you're on the right track. Yeah, deeper and deeper and more room is available. So someone asks, why do other people seem to have good times? It's just their journey. Everybody's going to be doing a lot of different things, and there might be some people at the moment who are having a blast. And that's great. Are they bypassing their stuff? Maybe sometimes. Sometimes people are just really having, and that's good. But having had like thousands upon thousands of sessions with people, even if they're doing well, don't forget the spiral. Anything you haven't addressed, you might walk that spiral and it'll be happy. And then eventually you're going to come across some layer of worthlessness, some layer of trauma. Eventually it's going to need rest along the way. And it'll be another layer of fear, a new kind of worthlessness you didn't have access to before or whatever. So even though some people on the outside seem very, very happy and are doing so well and having a good time, you have no idea what's going on in their mind or deep inside of them. Hey, I've been able to fake it till I make it lots of times. And then when I finally reveal to people that I'm hurting, they're like, really? You seem so pulled together. And I'm like, actually, no. I feel like a crazy person half the time and I'm suffering. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, because I was not asking for help, because I wasn't addressing it, because I was bypassing it. I was shoving it down underneath all my anger so I didn't have to deal with it, right? Let's see. So skin's going to be one of those, people are mentioning skin a little bit on the chat here. Skin's going to be one of those things that's kind of like the first responder. Your heart field is the first responder because bigger than your body. So stuff that comes in, emotional things and stuff, it'll hit your heart. And the skin is also sort of one of the responders. It's going to respond quite quickly to emotional stuff and it'll show up. And the body's changing. The body's trying to live in harmony with the earth. And it's being pulled in two different directions. The cultural direction of separation from the earth and power over and all these things. And then this pull from the earth herself into oneness and to collaboration. And so the body is going to show up saying, I need detox stuff. I need to, if I'm going to be able to be in alignment with what nature needs from us right now, I'm going to have to push all this forward. So I think that's just one of those clues. A lot of times the skin will be the first to show you. And so a good question, Joe says, by taking care of yourself, how many others did you help? Exactly. If I can take care of myself better and learn how to through baby steps, then I can help more people. And how I'm doing it, I'm carving out a little bitty path, and maybe there's certain souls who are like, that path, the one I could take too. And, and that's what I did with my teacher. She carved out a path. I'm like, that path, I want that. So I'm going to walk right behind. I'm going to follow this path. I'm going to do what she's been doing. And I'm going to put it in my own little style as we walk along. So you're going to, of course, own your own path, and you're going to make that path unique to you. But carving out a path into this is going others, whether you share it on YouTube or not. And Maureen, I'm very, very glad be available to you. And I'm so glad to uplift you. And I'm glad that you feel touched by this story too. And so Olivia wanted me to share any of my meditative practices. And the one that works best for me, Olivia, because sitting with my eyes shut actually doesn't work very well at all because my third eye then just takes over. So for me, I have to keep my eyes open. And what I do is I'll get the Sri Yantra, this beautiful, really neat, very galactic, sacred geometric mandala called the Sri Yantra. And I print it out and I keep it on my wall. And I just do a black and white versions too. But I'll gaze at the center of it. So I'll gaze into the center of it. And what it does is it eyeballs to stop their little micro movements. And then the whole thing disappears. It's very cool. And now it's happening faster and faster over the years. It's gotten faster that I'll feel that dissolving occur physically. And with my eyes open, I'm doing this gaze. I can physically feel oneness. And then I just hang out there and just be in the moment. And all the thoughts, they all of the overwhelm, all the physical feeling of overwhelm shifts, and I can feel the masterpiece of the moment. So gazing for me has helped the best because I can't just shut my eyes and meditate. So hopefully that'll help. That's the one that works best for me, and I'm no expert on meditation at all. Someone who you might like to learn from, is one of my teacher's friends. Her teacher is also Rama, and her name is Victoria Moore, M-O-R-E. She's a brilliant meditation teacher and teacher in general, and I highly recommend you learn from her if you can. Go check her out, Victoria Moore, M-O-R-E. And I did do an interview with her that's in the YouTube play, New Earth Conversations. There's a whole interview with her there as well. You might enjoy, and so you can get to know her a little bit. So Anne's asking, is worthlessness always the deepest layer hidden under anger? I've had the same explosions of the last 2 weeks due to lack of personal boundaries, complete with facial detoxing, right? Seriously. No, worthlessness is not always the deepest. It was just my experience, Anne, that I was hiding all my worthlessness from myself under anger because anger is such a difficult emotion for me. And so when I'm angry, I just lose it. I feel like I have no control and I hate it. Ugh, terrible feeling, right? Hey, I relate, blowing up at my family members even. Of course, I'm the way that looks is me getting mad and then instantly being like, oh, I'm so sorry. So not denying myself my anger too, saying, all right, I'm going to go put myself in timeout so I can just be mad and you don't have to feel me blasting my anger all over the place, right? There's going to be so many repressed things. It's going to be worthlessness. It's going to be all kinds of different traumas, victimhood, you name it. So it's going to be different for everybody. For me, I really have been able to name it as worthlessness in particular. Yeah, very good. So I'll just continue my chat here looking at Navia said, if we are an extension of the co-creative force of source, yeah, you were the one who wrote me. Thank you for writing me. I did read it. Could we not create a better system where there isn't quite so much pain and suffering and extreme activity? That's where we're heading. And for Navia, she says, pain is all absorbing and it pulls me away from wider awareness of consciousness. I'm going to challenge you on that. Now, I would like to have you sit with this as an idea and say, what if pain and suffering was the road that actually is going to take you into higher consciousness? if you don't deny it, face it fully, and you dissolve its power over you once and for all, every single time, you're going to be taken higher faster. The road to higher consciousness, as we do it through only love and light, does not take you higher faster. It's much slower. The road through pain and suffering takes you higher faster. The suffering and the pain have no more power over you, and the end of that power and over you resonates out with the rest of it. I believe that by us being willing to deal with our trauma fully, embrace it, really embrace those feelings. Again, it's frequency. You're standing in it so you can learn from it. This is a very precious path into it, to wear it, to know it fully so it doesn't have power over you anymore. Then as we all do this and we share with our families and our how to do it, and then more and more and more people do this, Navia, that is the end of the matrix system. That's the end of pain and suffering as the norm. But we must not only manage our stuff, but our lineage too. We're all here to help clean up the past 500,000 years of trash and suffering and pain. And it's in your DNA. It's an illusion that it keeps you from the consciousness. If you're willing to go into it, you'll find and allow it, welcome it in your body. You will find that it will dissolve and it will take you farther and higher than you ever went before. We're here to get this job done fast. If you want the end of suffering and trauma for all of humanity and yourself done fast so we can have these in place, so we can have nice things, then be willing to face every layer of shadow that shows up. Take you higher faster. Now, if you don't choose that road, that's okay. That's okay. The soul, what do you really want to learn? Do you want to learn the path that isn't going to take you as high, as fast? That's okay. No problem. Do you want to do it hard and fast? Sure, maybe you do. I do. If not, you're here to learn. You're here to be. You're here to be in each moment and do as much as you can with it, with every moment. It's precious. Don't live very long. Do what you feel is right. If what I'm saying is not, this is okay. You can just say, well, that's interesting, and move on. So it's I have a different viewpoint on suffering and pain than most people, because I have found that if I'm willing to face it and go into the layers of shadow, that is mysticism. And I have found more qualities of light and access to better qualities of light than I ever have by remaining only in joy, which my life has not been. So it's a useful way to consider moving forward. And again, if it doesn't feel right for you, that's absolutely okay. You're here as a soul. You got to do what you need to do. Yeah, very good. So June asks, how do we discern between service and falling into the saving people and saving things and the savior complex? Glad you brought this up. My savior complex for so long was really, really, really big. It almost felt like a helmet that I was wearing, and I would view like this. How many people can I save right now? And not even saying, can I save myself? I didn't even say that. Let me give an example, June, of why and how to release ourselves from the savior complex while still being of self with service. So a couple years ago, I got the pleasure of spending summer solstice with my teacher. And we had this lovely solstice, and it was all really nice, and it was interesting. And it felt like another sorting process, like all the dense consciousness kind of got sorted again. And every time the earth goes into these higher states of light, dense stuff kind of comes to the surface, or it'll be separated more so you can see it, and it's revealed more is kind of what it's like. But this time it had felt like a trap door just shut, and all this dense consciousness was underneath it, and all this formlessness and timelessness was above it. And I was standing on top of a trap door, and that there were all these souls underneath it, and it freaked me out. And I said, what do we do? Open the trap door? Can we save them? And my teacher, who's hard and fast, and I love it, and I love it because she forces my ego forward. She goes, Elizabeth, how dare you? How dare you try to take away their pain? They might be suffering. They're suffering so they can learn as a soul. Don't take that away from them prematurely. Don't take their suffering away so that they can suddenly magically feel better. Then they won't have done the work and really been able to love and experience the oneness and the source and the light and the formlessness available. They won't be able to embody it without having done the work on their suffering and pain. Your job is not to save them. Your job is to empower them. So I check myself. Am I trying to take someone's suffering away prematurely? Have they fully learned what they need to learn from this? Am I giving them tools so they can do it themselves? Or am I going in and fixing the problem for them, which is going to return? It will return because they didn't learn as a soul how to do it themselves. So our job, practitioners and healers and trauma advisors and friends and partners and all the above, our job is to say, what tools can I share that will empower this person to get through this? They're the ones who are going to have to shift the worth out of the way so they can continue to be uplifted into the light. They need to do that themselves so they can get stronger, the soul, and more knowledgeable, and be capable then and strong enough then to hand tools out to other people. That's why savior complex doesn't help. But the empowerment, the alignment with selfless service, the empowerment piece does. And then we end people feeling dependent on their healers when the healers teach the people how to heal themselves. And so my job is to make sure you don't need me anymore. My job as a healer, as a counsel, as an oracle, is to help you help yourself so that you can create the timelines and dream the future going to be good for you and everybody else. But to empower you, to strengthen you to get there. That's the difference, Jin. So hang out helps. Wonderful. So Caroline says, interested in hearing what you've been going through. It's very deep. At 68, I've been experiencing a lot of muscle and joint pain. And last September, I stopped eating bread. 4 months of respite, but this month the pain and stiffness came back. Do you think this is an aspect of what you've been describing? I haven't been eating any bread or flour. Absolutely. And so ask yourself, Caroline, just go into meditation, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, whenever you get a chance, and just ask your soul, ask Source God, what am I resisting? Am I resisting anything at all? And let just whatever the first things show up, whatever ideas pop up first, hang out with them. Just hang out with what's available. See if you can go into your physical pain and your joints and hang out there and ask your joints, am I resisting anything? What else do you need right now? And your body's going to show you, oh, there's some old trauma that's coming up right now. But yeah, I'm not surprised that this is resurfaced at the moment. A lot of people have been saying, hey, I was all better. And then go, it all got bad again. What's going on? I feel like crap. This is what's going on. Yeah, so hopefully that will help you. So Jody says, talk about the role of addiction that needs to be seen and transcended. It's very painful to go through. So yeah, definitely. I think addiction is just another of those programs, or what we might call genetic bondage, that's expressed over many lineage. Many of our ancestors have had those problems, and then we inherit these problems, and so we might call them genetic bondage or lineage trauma, right? And that lineage trauma is written in your DNA. It's like trash bags that fill a house, and your body's the house. And so you're being present enough, you're being awake enough and being willing to go through all those trash bags, all that's trauma. 99% of it's not even yours, but you're willing, one big, huge chunk at a time, to keep shifting it, to keep healing it. And it helps to heal all of your ancestors, and it helps to heal the future, and it helps to heal you. And then you start to realize just how big the house is, that this body house is 12 dimensions big, and that there's a lot of house. There's a lot of access, and it's blocked. It's blocked by trauma. It's blocked by the. So the more junk you move, the more you'll remember, the more access to higher dimensions of consciousness you'll receive. Why avoiding the trash doesn't give you access. This is why remaining in a state of only joy and happiness all the time isn't going to give you more access to higher dimensions. It only gives you that one frequency of feeling joy, and that's it. But there's an entire 12 dimensions of house to access. And eventually you shift all the trauma out, and then it's just upkeep. It's like our regular houses. Most of your houses are probably not filled to the ceiling with trash bags, right? Then it's just upkeep. And eventually the I am presence dissolves, and then the house dissolves. And that's enlightenment. So that's what it looks like and why it's so important. So Haman asks, what's the best way to help people when they pass over the veil and shed their physical body? How can we help those who are dying? And because a lot of our friends and family are, and many generations are finished now. And so they're shedding the body. How can we be helpful? I think it's useful to what we believe about death, what happens in death. It's important to be open about it. One of the things that around my grandmother dying is that we didn't talk about death. She wanted to avoid death at all costs. She fought it to the very, very last moment. And yet I don't know what her beliefs or her ideas were about death. I can feel her presence still. Being able to be open about it and be death positive and say, this is just part of this great journey, and being able to talk about what we think is going to happen and how precious these bodies have been, and celebrating what good we have learned and all things, to be able to talk about these things, communicate the best we can with someone so they feel like, hey, everybody's going to be okay. If you get that privilege to be with somebody, giving them that feeling that I can still love, I can still exist. This is merely the body, the vessel that I'm in. I am not my body. And everyone's going to be different. And so some people will respond to that very well and others won't. Maybe they will struggle. To be present, to pray, to meditate with them, to give them a chance to feel fully loved, to know that you're going to be okay too. A lot of times is going to be very precious. My grandmother, that I was going to be okay. And that's all she needed to feel happy about me and what I was doing. She just knew that I was on a good track. And so she didn't have any attachment over my outcomes then, because she knew I was going to be all right. So, I mean, this is a tough one. Death is really, really hard to go through. And of course, remaining death positive the best we can, and it's not the end of consciousness, I think is one of the best ways we can help. But we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it with our family and our friends and be open to death. Yes, very good. So Jonathan asks, I'm meeting again a very toxic resentment, a destructive intelligence that pushes others away. And it makes it so I can't trust what I say or feel. It feels like being my mother. Her pain is protected by this program, this toxicity. It's very hard to be. It feels like hating everyone. And I see I've just repressed this, and it creates a lot of shame. My mother's in fairly advanced dementia now and has no self-awareness. I'm due to visit them soon to clear the family house that's now sold. And I spoke to her today. I'm doubting my ability to hold awareness of this and not just do it myself. It feels like genetic clearing is possible. Can you offer clarity? Absolutely. I think feeling, Jonathan, is not you. It's not yours. And much of what I think you've been through has been the revealing of these layers, both toxic masculinity and also toxic femininity in yourself as a man. And so now you're being the major trash bags of resentment and bitterness that you inherited from your mom's lineage. And this is your chance to help clear it up for yourself and her. So you'll want to every day hold her and your father and anyone in their lineages. So many people maybe don't have the bio parents around, maybe your adopted parents, they count. Step parents, they count. Father figures, they count. Hold them in your field. Ask them to come with you. Ask them, their souls to come, whether they're alive or not. Put them in your heart space and do a clearing. Dear heart, lift this bitterness and resentment, all of the trash bags, lift all the bitterness and resentment maintained by my whole lineage out of my body and field and the bodies and fields of my lineage now. And take a big deep breath. Then we say, dear heart, got to fill it in. Fill my whole body and field with a sense of compassion and unconditional love that's available on this earth, and fill the bodies and fields of my whole lineage now. Your deep breath. So keep naming the emotions that you're trying to clear. The trash bags, name them, ask them to be fully learned. You're just wearing the frequency and toxicity right now so you can learn it. It's a big book. You're learning it, that's all. Name it and be willing, ask your body and your soul to fully learn the lessons of resentment now, not later, right now. You call it out, you clean it up, you make sure you breathe, you do it on behalf of yourself and your family and your lineages. You replace it with what's available. You keep doing this. You saw it took 2 minutes, right? Keep naming what's showing up. Toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, just toxic relationships, resentment, bitterness, disconnect. I command you out. You are the soul in charge of this house. No one else. It's only going to be you that can clean up your house. But the benefit to the rest of your family, including your mother, is going to be the lifting of this out of their houses as well by your presence, by you showing them a spiritual blue, what the outcome looks like. Now I'm more full of compassion and love. This subtly moves through the field. Do notice this subconsciously and energetically. Your mom doesn't have to know it with her brain. She'll know it with her body and her spirit. And you're going to be showing them with your light a new blueprint, which is, I have learned from this toxicity, learned from this resentment, and I have also learned that I'm finished with it. And I've replaced it with compassion and love. And you keep being the commander of your experience in your body over and over again. This will change the way the light moves through. It'll be clearer, and it affects everybody around you very subtly and yet very powerfully. Hope that will be useful to you. So I want to be able to move to other parts of our questions here, and there's a lot more that came through. So Maureen wants to know how I define spiritual bypassing. And when we're feeling in a good vibration, how do we interact when others' stuff is fired our way? See, that's the illusion, is that, oh, I'm feeling happy, and then someone comes along and says, blah. See, it was actually your soul and their soul who agreed to learn from whatever event is happening. Maybe someone comes and dumps a whole bunch. Maybe they get mad at you, and so they're really furious and they're just blasting their anger at you. Maybe they're traumatized and really affecting everybody, and they're in your field, right? And maybe even weirder, maybe the person in front of you, you don't even know them. Matter. Soul to soul. That person in front of you at the grocery store yelling at the checkout lady. Soul, because it's in your intention. Source said, through your souls, what is this going to look like? How are we going to learn from this? How are we going to learn from this lady yelling at this other lady? What is the frequency coming from this? Can we notice the frequency and not let it be embodied by us, right? Because it hits us. Oh, she's yelling. Oh, she's angry. Feel good. She's wearing anger right now. She's getting to know anger as a soul. Maybe she's forgotten that she's a soul. So she's functioning from trauma and ego. That's all right. But you can zoom out and look at that. All right, here we are. We've created this. Why did we create this? What do we need to learn right now? Well, right now I can control one thing, my reaction to this. Maybe it triggers me. Maybe it makes it so I don't feel happy like I was just. All right, so I'm going to welcome it. I'm going to find it in my body. Where does it trigger me? Oh, it hurts my heart that she's yelling at this poor checkout lady. Okay, it hurts my heart. I welcome this anger. It doesn't have to have power over me. And now I'm going to radiate something different. I'm going to radiate harmony and peace I was feeling 5 minutes ago. I'm going to radiate that. So you might radiate it, and it'll subtly reach her soul. That's all it is us learning soul to soul. How do we do this? And we might forget, and it's going to be trauma to trauma. It's going to be ego to ego. We'll be able to maybe come back, stand back from it. Okay, I see how I was speaking trauma to trauma. Now, if I process that trauma, now that I'm very clear about it, now it won't be there to be triggered again. And I can learn from that. It's mere advancement. One step at a time, one uncomfortable situation at a time, one joyful moment at a time, that's all. And so bypassing is when you're like, that's uncomfortable and I'm not going to deal with it. And it's just that simple. Bypassing is us hiding stuff from ourselves or being unwilling to go into something because it's uncomfortable. It's just, that's how I see it. And hey, I bypass. I think all of us do. Like, oh, anger, yeah, not doing that today. And then, subconsciously keep shoving all my worthlessness in the anger closet that I'm avoiding. That's bypassing. Very good. So Alicia asks a really good question. How do we know the difference between compassion for yourself or self-pity? Self-pity kind of has a certain wrapper to it, right? And that wrapper is a certain set of words. Self-pity is, why does this keep happening to me? This sucks. I can't deal with this. I hate feeling like this. I feel so bad and I don't understand. I'm sad for myself. I'm sad that I've been victimized. I'm upset. It's the maintenance of victimhood. And victimhood happens to all of us. And so does us being tyrants. That happens to us too. And then we learn about being a tyrant. We learn about being a victim and everything in between. Self-compassion has a different wrapper. It sounds like, what do I need right now? If I can meet these needs, can I do better work in the world? That's self-compassion, at least the way I've learned it, and I'm completely new at it. So that's how it sounds in my head. What do I need right now? What does Elizabeth need right now? What does my body need right now? That's compassion for myself. I can look back in my life and say, no wonder I felt like a crazy person. No wonder I've suffered. Look at this story. Of course, I have compassion for Elizabeth and what she's been through. And that's different than, poor me, look at how effed up my life is. And I can't bear it. I'm going to avoid it. Pity doesn't help you go into it so you can learn from it. Pity is another way to bypass what you've got to do, which is being able to shift that trauma out of the way and then being able to say, now what? What do I need now? And now, and the next moment. And so that's what I think it is. Perhaps that will be helpful. So why are abductions happening? That's another good question. And why are abductions happening? Well, lots of abductions have been happening and lots of different beings are abducting. And they all have different agendas. And again, soul to soul, we're creating these different experiences so we can learn. I've been abducted 3 times now, and I've only just in the past 6 months been open about any of that. I mean, I didn't even tell my parents about it until last year. They didn't have any idea. I didn't even tell any of my friends that I was growing up with, and they didn't know either because I hid it. I've been hiding it for so long because I was terrified of talking about it, and I'm not scared anymore. And so why do abductions happen? So we can learn, so they can learn. They have souls too, a lot of these beings, and they have agendas, and they might not be our agenda. It is about learning in the end. And I don't resent, and I'm not angry or afraid about what has happened to me at all. In fact, I feel that it has made me a much stronger person in the end. I would not have received access to universal compassion without this last one, which was the hardest. And many millions of people have been abducted. I mean, in America alone, 50 million people have been abducted. And so, you know, the other answer too is, look, we're on a galactic playing field here. We are not isolated, and we're trying to learn how to be sovereign beings. Eventually, we're going to have to end this power over thing, but we've got to come to terms with the fact that we have a galactic place and end all these lies that are saying that we are all alone in space, which is absolutely crazy talk. We are not, and we never have been, and we need disclosure. And the more disclosure that happens, my friend, is going to help us all to be able to come to terms with what has happened and then finally come into our sovereign power and say, no, we're going to have a different relationship. If you would like access to our bodies and our DNA and our experiences, you need to ask. We want to teach you about consent. Most of these beings have no clue what that is. And they don't have a whole bunch of feelings. They don't have emotional bodies. So how can they possibly know how we feel? They don't feel like we do. It's okay. Emotional bodies are very unique and they're precious. And by golly, we really ought to want to learn from them too, because they have technology that's far, far more advanced than ours. What if we could all come to the table and negotiate? We got to teach them how to, through compassion, through unconditional love. We must teach these things. You see, we're going to learn a lot by being willing to negotiate with these beings and by being willing to talk with them and communicate. But they're going to learn a lot too. They're going to learn about consent and emotion. They're going to learn about love and compassion, my friends. This is the emissaries of compassion and unconditional love that we will become in the future if we keep doing the work and being willing to step into any fear and dissolve its power over us. Then it's not going to be about, no, I don't want that to happen. No, I don't want to create this with you, which is exactly how it felt this past September. But in the end, what we created was so powerful that I have no doubt that it affected the other beings involved. You see, they'd not expected me to come in compassion and love after everything that had just occurred. They didn't expect me to show up and say, I'm not done with you. I'm not done with you. I want you to know that I love you because you exist. They were expecting that. And so they are going to have to learn eventually from us what compassion, love, and all of these things really are. So I don't, that's why, because we're learning. It's always going to be the same answer. Soul to soul, we're learning from each other, always. When we create these situations together, we do it together. Very good. So I'm not going to be able to get through all of our questions, y'all. And so let me see if I can pop through a few that might be showing up. And so Beautiful Soul says, Dear Elizabeth, you said we should tell our story. Today I had this thought in my mind again. It comes from time to time, this longing to let people know what happened to me and how it influenced my life. And also my path to free myself from this trauma. When is the right time for sharing? I think it's important to do it at a point when we're strong enough to share our stories, because I had the experience that people didn't know how to deal with it and withdrew from contact with me. And that was hard for me because I still needed help. So I decided just to talk about it in therapy. What a beautiful question. When is the right time to share? You see, my friend, even though when you were sharing and this might have triggered your friend, right? It triggered some trauma inside of them, perhaps. And then they just really got uncomfortable and they couldn't handle the frequency of the trauma, right? That's not you. That's not up to you. The sharing of it, though, did reveal to them what trauma was left inside them, right? So, look, lots of people are listening to me talk today, and I talk about my trauma. I talk about what I go through. I name it. I do process it. I try to process as much as I can of the trauma before I name it, so that it doesn't feel like me pushing my trauma outwards, right? So I process it first so I can get as much charge off of it as I can. And then I ask myself, what's the outcome? What's the learning that I've had? What's the quality of light at the center of this consciousness under pressure? And so, with that, that's often the best time to share. So even though only last weekend I went through this whole nervous breakdown thing, and I'm still recovering, I've processed a lot of the trauma of it, so you can hear the clearness of my learning about it. And then it might not trigger people so bad. It may have triggered some people today. I'm not sure. And even then, all that is just showing them there's some trauma that's still there. So if you're willing to speak soul to soul and not trauma to trauma about your story, and continue to do the work as any more of the pain comes up, and you keep processing it, then you're actually showing people a blueprint, a pathway in your field very subtly. This is how we deal with trauma. This is what it looks like on the in the outcome of it. This is the path to healing. And so the story isn't just about what happened, it's about how we were able to heal from it and how we're still healing from it. So that's the blueprint we're sharing when we share our stories that way. So there isn't a wrong time to share. And if you need to share to help you process the trauma, then yeah, do it in therapy where it's safe, where you can let it out so you can fully experience it in a place that is literally structured to allow that. And then you'll be able to take what you learned from moving through all of it and then share it with in a more public way, because you're adding in the other section of the equation, that is, and how was I able to get through some of this? And how am I still trying to get through some of this, right? Because like I said, I'm not done with worthlessness at all, but I'm sharing, okay, this happened to me last weekend. This is how I got through it. This is how it's affecting me still. And then that helps people to see, okay, there's steps to this. There are benchmarks, there's outcomes, right? So that's kind of what I see. I hope that helps. So look, I'm so sorry I'm not going to be able to answer all of your questions today. I got through as many as I could, and I do hope they were the very right, perfect ones you needed to hear. We want to get together, of course, and build a pillar of light. Let's build a pillar of light. It doesn't take long before we go. And this time, I did see a pillar of light to help humanity through worthlessness. I saw that. Where should we put it? For me, I think, last time we got together, we built a pillar of light in China. We built a pillar of light in Africa for what's going on with both of those continents. And so this pillar of light, I wanted to put it somewhere that it can be magnified. And water tends to magnify energy. So why don't we put this pillar of light at the North Pole so that that light can sort of percolate down around the whole earth like a big sort of lovely blanket of shifting of worthlessness. So the intention we have for our pillar of light is to support humanity in the finalization of their process of any worthlessness that's going on, any toxic masculine, toxic feminine, any negative programming, any trauma, anything that has continued to create and build up any amount of worthlessness throughout time. Our pillar is going to support humanity in this effort. So it's an energy of support. It's an energy of healing. It's an energy of, hey, the universe has your back. And so that's what I want to do together. Let's go to the North Pole. So all you have to do is imagine it, and it's very icy at the moment. So we're here at the North Pole. Let's get together, big, huge circle of people. Probably got about 150 people all together, and then many more, perhaps several hundred more who may listen to this later. And you just add in your intentions. The pillar doesn't go anywhere. It's a fourth dimensional object that we create together. You can add your intentions in later in any of the replays, in any of the pillars we've ever done, they still exist. They're still doing their thing, and you can always add more into it. All right, so here we are. If we get into this big circle together, we're going to project some quality of light from our root. And this one is support. It's support that's nourishing. It's formless, unconditionally loving support. It's not got any form to it, right? But it's still yet that buoyancy. It's buoyancy. It's the love that creates buoyancy that is supportive. It's kind of like the feeling of being buoyant in the ocean with all that salt water. You can't fall to the bottom, really, because you're being held by this very formless, intelligent light. And that's what we want to project as the new foundation. Surrender to formlessness, surrender to unconditional love. Let you float in it. Let it have your back. And so that's the energy, the quality of light we're going to project together right now on 3 with a deep breath to the center of our circle at the very tippy top of the planet on the North Pole right now. So just take a deep breath and let that quality of light move through your root to our foundation. Wow. So every time we do this, I'll see very different things because every pillar is different and all the intentions are different. The people are unique. And this looks like the Garden of Eden in the middle of ice. It's crazy. It looks like this oasis just showed up, like plants and water, and it looks beautiful. It's really cool. Nature has our back. There it is. That's the foundation. It's just nature. The earth is the Garden of Eden. Ah, beautiful. Good. Now let's move into the heart space, and it's going to be universal compassion. Compassion for yourself too. Compassion for ourselves. Compassion that helps us not to bypass. Compassion that helps us to reach higher states through the suffering. Compassion that says, because you exist, you deserve love. That's all that is needed, is simple existence. That's what we're talking about. So let that project from your heart to the center above our little Garden of Eden here, to the center of our pillar of light now with a deep breath. Ah, very cool. So again, very unique pillar, nothing I've seen before. So all the light from the Garden of Eden that I can see, it moves up into, it looks like this lens, like a big, beautiful, sort of, it looks light blue, like this lovely indigo, bright light. And all the light from it moves up through it, and then it's magnified. And then it goes down and around us, and I can see it moving across the horizon around the earth. So that level of compassion, it magnifies the support of nature that nature has for us, the support of the earth, the support of the Divine Mother and Divine Father, the support of Source and the web of life. It magnifies it so it can be accessed through our compassion as humans for each other and ourselves. Very good. Now let's add our topper to it. So we're doing this from the third eye, from our conscious self, through our consciousness, from our soul's consciousness. We're going to project just this very pure quality of light, which says, don't give up. Don't give up on dreaming. So we're going to say, don't give up, but also we need to dream. The dream of the mystical dream of our future as emissaries of love and compassion. the mystical dream of our future as emissaries of love and compassion. Let's project that. And the gusto to not give up till we get there, right? So that's what we might project at the top now with a deep breath. There's that feeling I could feel was coming. It's this gold light that comes through, and everyone did so lovely with that. It's just pure gold, gold light of enlightenment. And then that encased everything, and encased the whole planet, and encased the compassion, and encased the Garden of Eden energy, the supportive nature energy. And that's that hug. I feel the hug around the earth. I feel being held by that dream of the future, and the power, the empowerment to keep going in our daily life, to keep going through every uncomfortable situation, to keep trying to function soul to soul. And when we don't, to give ourselves compassion around it, and to keep doing the cleanup work that we're doing so we can rebuild, so we can transform this planet and transform our relationship with it and with each other. But most importantly, is the relationship with yourself, because you're part of that. You never were separated. That's the illusion we're getting rid of now. It's going to change you. It's going to change your relationship with your soul. That's so important. Don't forget that part. I hope today you've seen that. Somebody who finally realized that I can't forget me. I can't forget me. I got to include me. I got to empower me. And that this is the greatest act of compassion I could give. I'm good at giving compassion to everyone else but myself. So baby steps. Baby steps. I love all of you so much. Thank you for joining me today and building this pillar of light. I hope you felt it, that it helps feel supportive, that you could feel the hug from everyone else too. I hope that this has given you a chance to keep moving forward, knowing that you're not alone. And I hope that you're able to experience a little bit more compassion for yourself today, and share this with somebody who might need to hear that message, that they're not alone and we're doing good. We're doing good. We're going to keep going. I know it seems really hard right now, and it's going to plateau, and then we'll get to the next level and see more ego and more trauma to heal. But that's where we're at right now. That, yeah, it is crazy, and it's pretty wild at the moment. And you're not alone in thinking so, if you think so, like I do. And you know what? We all have each back. I've got your back. Nature has our back. All the animals and the horses and the cats and the earth has our back. Even the beings who've been doing some crazy stuff have our back. In the end, they're gonna find so much learning from us in the end. And that's something I think we can guarantee is at least an incredible amount of learning on their behalf. And eventually the learning of consent, so that we can negotiate and have some really fun, great fun learning from each other instead of how it's been going. And I think that we can work towards that. We can do it together. So here we are, one more day at a time, and I'll see you at the end of next month. And so don't have my little calendar in front of me, but so far I've been kind of doing it at like the last Sunday of the month. So let's just call it that. Last Sunday of the month. Each month is our community call like this. And I'm going to try to answer more of your questions, because there were so many that came through and they were all really, really good, and great job at asking good, juicy questions. Thank you. Because those questions help everybody else too, of course. And I'm so sorry I couldn't get through them all. maybe next time we'll tack on a little more time and answer some more. So there is always that possibility. But I really do love each of you. And I'm so glad that you're my friend. And here we are together moving through, and we're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. If you are even listening at all to this, then I know you are, because you are wanting change. And change is, of course, most wonderful interest is how to create more change. And it starts from the inside out. And I know you've been doing a lot of hard work. And you men out there too. And you women, and I love all of you. Thank you. Good. We'll talk soon, and I'm here for you. And I hope to see you again very soon. Namaste, my friends. Bless you.